Welcome to Directionally Correct, a Felix podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, nobody.
There you go.
There we go.
I love it. Thanks to our sponsors, Lightcast. The world is full of talent data, but more data can lead to more questions, uncertainty, and stagnation as organizations sift through it to figure out what's fact from what's fiction. Lightcast's talent intelligence platform answers your most difficult workforce questions to drive meaningful business results. With more than 20 years of experience as MC in burning glass, Lightcast accelerates your work, bringing together hundreds of billions of vetted, constantly updated data points and incredible insights to drive strategic talent decisions. Your organization can tap into the deepest open repository of skills, supply, and demand data in the world to transform your hunches into a skills-based future for your organization. Lightcast's flexible solution, used by 67 of the Fortune 100, can integrate your own data, be guided by in-house talent experts, and give you the tools and confidence to explore it for yourself. To learn more, book a demo at lightcast.io. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization. Yeah, I think life's too short. And so standing in doorways, go to Airbnbs, aggressive haircut people.
What else you got today?
I think I got it off my chest now. I actually kind of feel a little bit better. I'll be honest with you.
We can start the pod now. Now that we're fully actualized.
I'm actually cool with that if you are. I don't think this session reflects well on either of us.
Let's just end it right now.
Yeah.
Let's just end it. But I think you do have big news regarding the future of the pod, though, right?
Yeah, well, a few things I wanted to share about. One was, this is our last episode of Lightcast sponsoring the podcast, so I wanted to give a big thank you to them for sponsoring us. I think it's been a lot of fun having both Mark Hansen and Ron Hetrick on. I think those were both excellent episodes. We got an awesome new sponsor coming that you'll hear about pretty soon, and some big returning guests as well as some new awesome guests that we have coming. But the big news, I think for you and I think we covered this with Shuba the other day, is we're moving to every other week episodes instead of doing them once a week. I know we were doing kind of this 4 weeks on, 1 week off type of thing, but man, this thing, it becomes a lot of work to do it every week. And so moving to every other week episodes, I'm pretty excited about. I don't know. Do you have any excitement about that, Scott?
Well, I mean, clearly we thank the Lightcast folks and the new sponsors up and coming. Airbnb, sorry. Sorry for
Airbnb. Thank you for your sponsorship.
Thank you for your sponsorship or future consideration. I don't know how exactly we got hooked up on the weekly schedule early on. I think we wanted to do it once a month, honestly. I think we kicked around that idea, and then we just started showing up every week. And then next thing you know, you're like in it, and you got things planned out in the future. But it's a grind. It's a grind. I think it'll be a lot easier on both of us just to manage our day jobs and still have fun and have good guests and good conversations on. It'll be easier to manage overall, and we won't annoy people once a week, but we get every other week, I suppose.
Well, and just let's be real about this. I find that after the weeks we take a break and I'm coming back to the podcast, I actually look forward to it. And when you're on like week number 4 of being back to back and having to do all this stuff off screen for the podcast, because most of the work isn't actually doing the podcast. Most of it's behind the scenes. I'm showing up on the 4th week. I was like, man, I don't even want to be here. And I think that shows through on the quality. So I think this will make it to where every episode just has a very jovial, fun environment. And that's what I really get out of it. And I think that's what you get out of it too.
Yeah, rejuvenation, definitely. I think our longest streak, I don't know what our longest streak was, but it has to be at least 16 weeks, right? I mean, it's a lot every Friday.
There have been stretches of time where we went for a long period of time. And some of those weeks, we'd even record 2 episodes. People don't even realize that. And it was just like, man, like it wears down on you. But like, I enjoy the heck out of this. I enjoy spending time with you. I enjoy talking to the guests. I enjoy the Cole Scott episodes. I mean, these are fun. Getting a bitch about stuff today. This has been fun. But like, it's a lot of work.
What do you think about my monster friend here?
Yeah. So like, who is that?
That's my pet monster. This is like an '80s cartoon, and I'm at my parents' place and
Oh,
found
okay.
my little corner. I also have this
Nice.
handheld microphone. I feel like a rock star. We're doing it.
You are a rock star.
This is PSYOP prep. Actually, I bought this microphone for a presentation. I was going to give a presentation to I think like 3 to 5 thousand people, and I'd never really practiced with a microphone before on stage. So I
Oh,
bought it
really?
on Amazon and just like practiced in the house with a microphone, talking into it. I rock. I like it now. It's awesome.
That's really clever, actually. You know, a lot of people they practice in front of a mirror. I've never actually done that, but I've heard that that's something that people do. I don't know, like, was it helpful? Did the presentation go well?
Oh, I nailed it. In fact, like
You nailed it.
a long time ago, you heard one of my presentations. That's maybe how we got reconnected. I was doing
Yeah,
some analytic presentation, but you try to put yourself in the moment, try to make the atmosphere as much like the real scenario as possible. I wonder if like MetaQuest 2 or 3, I guess, has an app that like puts you in front of a massive audience and lets you pr- practice presentations. That would be fantastic app.
are those the VR goggles or
Yeah,
something?
you put your goggles on and like you're immersed in a 3D world. Like you could have like different settings, like boardroom presentation with like 20 bigwigs, or like all the way up to arena, full of all the
Yeah.
a million people.
It would definitely help people get over their fear of public speaking, I would think. I don't know. Tell me this. To
Yeah.
me, there's really not a whole lot of difference between 50 people and like 5,000 people. It's just there is a difference between like 2 people and 50, though.
Yes, the way I've said in the past, like once you get over 10, it just add them on. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you get over 100, just put in another 5,000. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, because if you have 10 or less, you kind of have to like acknowledge every person in the room, either with like your eyes or with like, you might like say, and Julie thought that about that. But once you get past that, you don't have this obligation to like, you know, look at everybody or talk to everybody in the room.
I think it was like Lady Gaga said, play a small venue like a arena, and play an arena like a small venue. I find myself like in the big presentation moments, finding someone in the room to connect with and keep coming back
Hmm.
to that same person. No, not mentioning the names or interacting with them, other than
Yeah,
just catching their eyes, just using them as a waypoint.
absolutely. And oftentimes those people, they'll come up to you after the presentation and like strike up a conversation just because of that. Like I find that to be like a cool thing.
Well, I didn't know we didn't plan on getting on presentation talk, but
Hey,
yeah.
this is fine. This is actually better than the bitchy stuff.
What's the biggest crowd you've ever presented to?
I think we talked about this before once. I think it's definitely been over. Well, when I'm trying to think, there's been a few different cases. I think probably the biggest room had maybe 1,000 people in it. I think
Yeah,
something like that. And virtually, it doesn't like I've presented to a lot of people before virtually, but that doesn't have the same feel. It kind of just feels like right now where you're on like a Zoom call or something.
virtual is really weird. I think I've had 20,000 virtual, but in a room, yeah, it's definitely over 500.
Yeah.
I don't. It was a big ass room. It could have been like 2,000. I don't know.
I mean, you're a big deal, Scott. Like, I would come to that presentation.
I kind of shy away from that stuff now. Like you get asked to do all sorts of stuff, and it's like, I'll do it if I want to do it. I always feel great afterwards, but the lead up is awful. Like I've got
Yeah,
to like put it together and like get it going. But like once you rock it and it goes well, there's no better feeling.
we got 100th episode coming up. I'm actually pretty excited about that. Well, it's like a big milestone, right? And originally, I thought about like trying to get like a big guest to have him on here, and but I didn't think it would be as fun as if we would do it as a Cole and Scott. So I think we got somewhat of a surprise coming of a blowout for the 100th episode. So I'm pretty pumped about it. I don't know. What's your perspective?
We need a venue. We need a venue or some sort of like funtivities, as they say.
If anybody wants to reach out and give us, like a free cruise or something like that, we're definitely open to it. Yeah.
Talk to Airbnb.
Yeah.
Come on down. I'm correct.
Definitely not them.
No, we need like I'm thinking like tropical on the beach, maybe like a rooftop, maybe like on top of a building in Chicago. We have no real orientation to Chicago, but
Yeah, my preference is got to be somewhere fun, and it's got to be somewhere quiet. Fun and quiet are two things that don't usually go together, though. That's the problem.
who did we talk to in Chicago at the Talreos? That
Nick
Nick,
Brimmer.
Nick was fantastic. He had hot takes on N64 GoldenEye, but the room was so loud during happy hour. We had to like switch venues real quick.
Yeah, so quietness is of the essence. But I don't know, man. One of the things I was looking forward to about today's episode is we talked about doing kind of like a special nerdery. We're gonna call it Trading Blows, where we just kind of go back and forth on some articles. You wanna do some nerdery?
Well, here let me make a quick announcement real quick before we get into
Okay.
that. I have something special.
Oh,
Well, I don't know if it's special, but have you ever conducted an analysis? Say you got like predictor one and an outcome variable, and you say like, okay, that's great, but I want to try predictor two and the outcome variable, or predictor three and the outcome variable. So now all of a sudden you got a lot of different code that you got to write there. And say you want to like change the outcome variable, or you added some control variables. Typically you'd have to do this through a loop. Well, I made a package in R. Let me find it.
really?
Oh yeah, I'm a narcissist, so I call it the Scotty Hines package.
That's
But
delightful. I love that.
it's freely available on GitHub. Feel free to download it. It has all the basic statistical tests, t-test, regression, ANOVA, and you can rip through. It's for exploratory analyses. You can rip through a whole bunch of different analyses really quickly. I will say that the more advanced you get, the more kind of wonky the package is. But feel free to download it and use it.
Dude, I am so proud of you. This is awesome. And
Yeah, I had a collection of these like sort of like for loops, and I finally cracked the code on how to turn them into functions where you could just add in, say, I want these 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 control variables. I want these 400 predictor variables. I want these 7, 8, 10 whatever outcome variables, and it'll just rip through them all super quick. Produces a data frame, so you can just put it in Excel, super easy.
Yeah.
Hopefully it speeds up analyses for everybody. That's the whole goal. And it's a labor of love, so if you do find an error, feel free to shoot me a message, but also don't expect me to jump on it immediately.
Well, and maybe you even get some people that want to collaborate with you and build it out even more. And this be like a whole, you could call it the SH package or something, on top of the Scotty Hines or something. But I'll definitely include this in the show notes and put it in the newsletter, because this is awesome. Like, this is really cool.
I think it will help. I think it will help folks, especially if you want to do like, once again, exploratory analyses and then like dig in deeper once you find some like interesting patterns in the data. I mocked up a random effects model syntax last night, so we got a new function involved there. So there you go.
Already adding additional functionality. It's almost like this is a real thing or something. Wow.
I have a function to create fake data. If you just want to like get some fake data to play with. You can create a super quick means table. Just enter a group variable and all of the numeric variables you want. It'll spit out a super quick means table for you. And that's super. That can be time consuming.
The fake data thing is actually really intriguing. That's one of the things. I even wrote an article about this a while back about giving advice to people who are trying to like break into people analytics, because there's not that many public data sets out there that you can play with. And so I always give the advice, like, create some fake data and work with it, but it's not really easy to create high fidelity fake data. So having something like this to help out could be a game changer for people who are trying to break into the space.
And granted, this is not super high fidelity. Like the Iris data set and the CARS data set has specific properties that allow you to find significant results. This is more random number generation, but gets you several different variables to play with the code. And there's also tutorial code in that GitHub. So feel free to download it, check it out, play with it, find errors, tell me about it. I'll ignore it. There you go. That's the process.
Yeah, I might just start the episode right there.
We probably should cut out a lot of the negativity. I don't know if people are here for that.
Yeah, but this is cool, man. Well, are you ready to move on and do some trading blows?
Yeah, absolutely.
The Nerdery.
It is cool. It's a long time coming. I had a collection of these. Like I said, 4 loops for years, and like you had to modify them for each special project. But this one you can apply to everything super quick.
I got some more questions about it. Like, how long? Like, let's say somebody out there really ambitious, they want to go out and develop their own kind of R package or Python or whatever they want to do. Like, how long did you have this idea? How long did it take you to code it out, to put it into a package? What was like the whole process that you went through?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this for like 4 years. Because like I said, I had this collection of syntax that I had a special R syntax that I would call in and just kind of refer to it for other projects. But that's kind of a bitch, right?
Yeah.
Because you gotta remember to include it, and they're not all exactly the same for every project. The way I had it set up, and then I don't know, maybe like 3 months ago, I figured out how to include the variables in a way that wasn't project specific. I.e., you could have no control variables, or you could have 1 or 50 or whatever you want, and the same for the predictors and the outcome variables. And just kind of like slowly figure out how to do it. And once I had a like nice solid function in place for, I think I was doing like a linear regression or something like that. I was like, well, this is super easy to like parse over to like a t-test or a logistic regression or ANOVA. The ANOVA one's actually pretty dope because it also provides contrast, which the base R syntax doesn't provide you. And then like you got all these other derivations, etc. So like now I got a collection of functions, and then I just got on the old Google and found a tutorial on how to make it into a package, and it's really not that complicated. There's a few lines of code. You got to do some documentation in the syntax code, and it has built-in tools, a few lines of code, and you're good to go.
Really? So there's no like gatekeeping, there's no like committee you have to convince to include it or anything like that?
Well, if you want to put it on the CRAN, which I guess maybe that'll be the next phase or something like that, I'm sure you got to do some additional hoops or something like that. But I have my own GitHub. Just put it up there. Everyone come download it all you like. And it's a little bit harder to install on your computer, but I think in the tutorial it shows you how to do it, or at least gives you a head start. You'll have to be a little bit techie, not massively techie, but yeah, I mean, like just maybe 2 hours of total trying from the time I figured out what I need to do to the time I had it done. Yeah, no big deal.
That's fascinating. So what that tells me is like the barriers to entry to doing things that'll help you out for a lot of like time-saving mechanisms, they're like 2 hours away from happening. Right.
Well, Matt Clancy, the economist, maybe we should have him on. That'd be a really interesting guest. He does a lot of innovation work and modeling of how innovation occurs. And I listen to his podcast every so often, and he was talking about the amount of effort versus the outcome, expected outcome. And like what he was talking about was the first 30 minutes of effort gets you like say X outcome. The next 30 minutes of effort gets you about half of X outcome. The next 30 minutes of effort gets you about 1/4 X. So, you get these like decreasing value with the more time you spend on it. And we all kind of know what this means in our personal lives. Like the more time you spend on something, like you're just starting to do finer and finer things that have less and less impact. So just getting things up and running just getting them started is the hardest part in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah, diminishing returns, and I think that's why I never do anything at all. That's the most productive thing you can do. You know, never start.
Why even bother? Someone else will figure it out.
You want to do trading blows?
Yeah, let's do some trading blows. What you got?
The first thing I have is, and I brought this up maybe a few weeks ago when we were teasing this episode. Um, Herman McGinnis published something in, I think it's the Human Resource Management Journal, about 4 critical implications of generative AI for social science research. And I'll just read them off to you really quickly, and then we can kind of bandy about it. The first one is enhancing management practices. And what this means is like improving things like recruitment, training, employee engagement, and things like that. The second is ethical and security challenges. I think we've hit on those quite a few times. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The impact on employment is the third. So, like, is this going to displace people? I think we've talked about that quite a bit too. And then the last is regulatory frameworks. And we've seen like the, laws and guidance from different kind of governmental bodies and regulations that have come out in relation to AI. But all of those have a social science component to them. And I just think it's cool to see like leaders in the space that are keeping up, right? So like we've talked about before, Herman McGinnis would be like one of those people I would love to have on the podcast. And he's been a leader in the space for years and years, but clearly he's staying on the cutting edge of things that like how to use generative AI in social science. And there's the thing that stood out to me about it is like there's 2 kind of different layers to this. One layer is what is it going to do to improve our research? And the other is how are we going to use social science research to understand the impacts of AI on society? And so I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know. Do you have any reactions to this?
Oh, is it like first, like the ethics and the laws seem to go hand in hand, or at least they should, right? Um, but I don't think we've totally cracked that nut because we still have lawmakers that don't understand the technology making the laws and or have overreach, right? They try to.
Yeah.
What was the New York law that essentially said like no algorithm could be used, which
Yeah.
not great. Um, I it, it's great that we need to turn to computers to understand ourselves in a lot of respects, right? Isn't that funny?
Well, they're like a force multiplier. And I think about like pre-computers, what social science research was it was a lot of work. And, it would take months and months and months just to get, 40 participants in your study about whatever. And now you can, have a million, people that you have, or a billion even people of archival data for whatever reason for that's collected, and you can do research on it almost immediately with a few lines of code. So the cycle times have definitely decreased.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I love these old studies you see, and you would see like 26 participants total.
Yeah. It's like, well, this is the best we got.
But like if you think about like Gen AI, a lot of like Freud stuff was just sitting there like doing qualitative stuff, like finding something interesting that someone said and like, oh, that's interesting, kind of digging into it a little bit deeper. And not saying we come full circle, but definitely in a lot of respects, we were rediscovering the value of qualitative information beyond um, survey responses, or they call it quantitative, but yeah, and there's a lot of wiggle room in what we consider quantitative there.
Well, I think, and this might be one of the reasons why um, theory was stronger in the past than it is right now.
Oh, absolutely.
I think qualitative research lends itself better to theory generation than quantitative research, which is just a lot of times just brute force of just throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And so I think as the more research has gotten quantitative, the quality of theories has decreased.
Yeah, these assholes that generate these like packages that just rip through quantitative data.
Yeah. They're even generating fake data, you know?
You don't even need humans anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. It's an interesting thought, and you had presented something around like just being able to create item stuff. I mean, we're at the very beginning stages, and I think that's kind of what Herman's
Hmm.
hitting on here. It's like things to be aware of,
Yep.
um, and the future's wild.
Absolutely. Well, did you want to hit me with something?
I got something for you. Okay,
Right.
so this is a survey from intelligent.com, who I don't know who they are, but they completed it in December 23, so fairly recently. And the question is, during job interviews, employers say recent college graduates have done the following things, and just kind of get your reaction. So 53% say they've struggled with eye contact.
Okay.
Now, we're probably talking like
This track.
Gen Z versus what Gen Alpha, whatever the difference is. Uh,
Yeah.
50% ask for unreasonable compensation.
Okay. Tracks.
47% dressed inappropriately, which that's funny. Like I don't know exactly what that means, whether they're wearing like club gear or pajamas or
Yeah. Or showing up in like workout clothes or something. I don't
like they could be like wearing like a Robin Hood hat or like something you'd wear to like the Kentucky Derby. I don't know. I don't know what dressed inappropriate means. Used inappropriate language, 27%. It's just
Well,
fantastic.
I think we're guilty of that, so I'm just gonna gloss over that one.
Yeah, like once again, like what's inappropriate? Like, is it cursing? Probably. Is it like, well, I yeeted that and no cap and I got the Riz on the down low or whatever, like that's not
Yeah.
like job appropriate. Uh 21% refuse to turn on cameras during a virtual interview.
So this is one I don't know where this comes from. Right? Well, maybe it comes from the same place. Like I've heard that some people, because they use a telephone so infrequently now, like have like telephone trauma, and so they'll even do like therapy on like how to answer a telephone because that's like a big issue for them. I wonder if it's related to that, except instead of it being a telephone, it's like Zoom calls is the equivalent of a telephone. It's just you've got your camera on. I don't know.
Well, it's like the next level. It's like it's more personable, right? So now you got the video of that person, but at least if you just have audio, you can it feels more distant. Keep them arm's length. It's like you could, in theory, work with somebody and never see their face, right?
Yep. And it's like, is there something inhumane about that?
Here's the kicker: 19% brought a parent to the interview.
Ooh, that's a well, and that could be related to, I think, like a significant number less kids now have a driver's license,
Yeah,
right? And so it could just be like literally they don't know how to drive, and so their parent had to drop them off.
surely they mean like in the interview, like
Oh, like in
into the situation.
that's that's so bold. I don't like I'm a pretty bold person. That's so bold. I wouldn't even know how to show up like that. Like even if you dared me to do it.
You're the hiring manager. What do you do? Someone brings in their mom, and the mom's like the hype man. Be like, Timmy's the best computer Excel guy I know.
Well, I mean, imagine, and what I'm not talking about is like somebody with like disabilities or somebody like bringing in like a translator or something like that. But imagine just a normal person is like, I don't really know how to do this job, but I brought in my friend who knows how to do it really well. I'm gonna have them answer your interview questions for me. Like that would never be acceptable. So why would it be okay to bring another human being into an interview that could potentially help like it puts every other candidate at a disadvantage, and I feel like fairness in selection is like one of the things that I'm most passionate about. So I would just have to say this is fundamentally an unfair proposition to the other candidates.
Well, assuming it's an early career folk, because you wouldn't expect like an executive to bring their mother into the situation. Every other important conversation a young adult has gone through, because the other young adult has gone through at that point, has had their parent involved. Like we get called to the principal's office, you got the parent there. You go to the school counselor. You got the parent there. I guess once you graduate college, though, I mean, if you still got your parent there, it's wild. It's
I mean,
wild.
do they bring their parent to all their college exams?
I don't know.
I don't know.
But I mean, like 19% of organizations say they've seen this behavior. So that's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Do you want me to hit you with one?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I've got a post from Zoe Ziani, I think is how you pronounce it. And she had found some research that showed that since 1993, if you go across the disciplines of cognitive psychology, educational psychology, health and clinical psychology, IO psychology, and personality and social psychology, there have been 39,000 new constructs developed and 43,000 measures published in psychological science. And I mean, this is just an excellent post here where they actually show this like graph of this map of all the psychology constructs and the number of citations that they've had. And so she makes these two recommendations. One is that we have way too many constructs and measures that are poorly defined. And two, it makes it very difficult to build cumulative knowledge when nobody's really working together to see if these constructs overlap. So I just thought that this was such an I thought the picture was really interesting, but also just the proliferation of constructs in our field has just been insane.
Yeah, it doesn't do a service to the field at all. Where people already think that it's a soft science, right? And you just got like all these sort of like fluffier, sort of more thinly sliced things. I was perusing the IPIP probably about 3 weeks ago because I'm a nerd, That's how I do. And it's overwhelming, the number of scales and the number of items and et cetera. In theory, they're all psychometrically valid. A lot of them have validity statistics. I would love to see, maybe this is the next step for someone's dissertation or something like that. Somehow get a hold of these and hierarchically arrange them into some sort of structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably just going to pop out to be the Big Five or maybe the hexaco model or something like that. But in perhaps a subset of just like sort of clinical issues, defiance disorder, et cetera, whatever, are more like sort of clinical populations. But I'd love to see it like hierarchically arranged. And then at that point, because sometimes you do need fine-grained assessments to find fine-grained problems.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, especially in IO, not so much. But it would be wildly fascinating to see them all arranged in some sort of way that you could make sense of it. Besides, it looked like a heat map. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was a heat map.
Yeah.
There's this guy named Balaji Srinivasan. He's like a technologist, and one of the things he talks about is the history of business. It's just the history of bundling and unbundling.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could say like prior to 1993, there was probably only like 5 validated psychological measures that were widely in use. So it was all bundled up. And then there was this period of unbundling where 39,000 new constructs got, invented. And now we need to go into a period of bundling again, where we really, really kind of, bundle it up again and get down to a reasonable number that are, best in class in terms of the science. Like one of the things that I had to cover with you today, which I'll just hit on it briefly, is they showed in 2023, there was a record 10,000 new research papers that were retracted, right?
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, 10,000. Well, maybe if we had a period of bundling, you wouldn't have to retract 10,000 papers, and perhaps we could cut it down to a reasonable number of constructs that we could all kind of agree on.
Agree on and forward the science and find like really nuances that could help folks. Why were they retracted? Did it give any sort of indication? Do you recall?
No, I mean, I think it's all the reasons that we've talked about before, the open science movement, I think it's everything like people that are creating phony journals, all of the above.
Well, that's just like blatant cheating, this sort of stuff. As far as like the proliferation of scales and these sort of things, I blame computer technology, i.e., SPSS probably, and just the ability to do factor analytics on subsets of items and just come up with you find 5 items that hang together and kind of do a poor man's analysis of what it may look like, and like, oh, now we got a assessment of how much we hate Airbnb, and there you go. That's put that in the IPIC.
Just put a nice bow on that one.
Put a nice bow on it. Now you got a new scale.
What you got for me now?
Oh, you just begging for it, huh? You just begging for a little research, huh?
Trading some blows,
Trading some blows. Here, let me pop this into the chat. This is called Should We Respect LLMs? A cross-lingual study on the influence of prompt politeness on LLM performance. So the question is like, kind of like saying, hey, Alexa, thank you so much for giving me the answer, please, and all this sort of stuff. They found that if you're overly polite to LLMs, they give you worse results. But if you're overly rude as well, it gives you worse results as well. So you need to be just, be direct with LLMs, but you don't need to say please, thank you, and ingratiate yourself to the LLMs or treat it like garbage to get the best results.
You find the best research. Like I always come to these, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have some good stuff for Scott today. And then you come with the should you be polite to LLMs research, and I'm like, man, now I feel inferior.
The optimal level of politeness varies depending on the language, indicating that LLMs mirror human communication traits and are influenced by cultural norms. So kind of like if you're like overly polite to someone, they may sense weakness. But if you're a dick, they're gonna, give you poor results too. Just like walk out of a restaurant when you feel like you've been slighted.
But I feel like this is like people are worried about are LLMs conscious. It's like, well, if they're already sensing weakness in us, they're at least semi-conscious.
It's crazy, right? Because you want to treat it like a human, but yeah, is it sensing weakness or is it sensing that you're just being overly rude?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it's probably pretty easy to define, politeness. It's probably a little bit more challenging to define being overly rude versus just rude. So I wonder.
Maybe there's a scale.
Maybe there is a scale. I don't know. Maybe it's a 39,000, construct scale of rudeness that we should definitely bundle up with some other constructs.
But it's an extension of what do you call it? Prompt engineering, right? They act as a IO psychologist, PhD level advisor, and give me information on whatever. Like, okay, that's fair. But then, at the same time, people could be like totally rude to it. I'm not making any good points here. This is terrible. I know. It's daydreaming, really, is what's going on.
Well, you want me to knock you back into it with another article?
Yeah, hit me with it.
All right. The pharmaceutical giant Bayer is getting rid of bosses and asking nearly 100,000 workers to self-organize to save $2.15 billion.
Self-organize.
Self-organize.
Do you know what kind of, like, are they getting rid of the senior leadership, getting rid of the middle management, getting rid of the first line?
I think they're getting rid of all middle management. I think there's senior leadership and then 100,000 people who report to no one.
I've been thinking about this quite a bit, like the role of middle managers, and like I feel like AI is going to take them away. I feel like AI is going to take them away. We've talked about this on the past, like 2 podcasts.
Yeah, we have. Well, and I think it's relevant because of findings like this. Like this is like the next hot topic. I remember like early on in the podcast, we talked a ton about remote work and return to office, and because that was pretty relevant at the time. Right now, it's like, what is AI having the most impacts on? What's not having impacts on frontline workforces, especially if you do something in the physical world.
Yeah,
and it's not having an impact necessarily on executives. So who does that leave? That leaves management, right? And
the self-organizing factor there is the kind of wild part. Like, what does that mean? Like, treat people like Al Qaeda? You just figure out your own sort of like amoeba like structure and still try to accomplish some sort of goals for Bayer?
Well, this was I was a little bit ahead of you in grad school. This was like a really hot topic in Teams research when I was in grad school, is like, should all organizations just be self-organizing teams? Because it was really hot to say like teams were the future of work. There is no, you don't need hierarchy anymore. You don't need, just the formalized, even defined teams. They wanted like self-organizing teams. And I think two things are in conflict there. AI is obviously this third variable that comes into the equation, but let's say AI doesn't exist. There's one thing that self-organize, like the people who advocate for self-organizing teams don't realize, and it is, first of all, one of the things that people seek the most at work is structure and role clarity. And in a self-organizing framework, they're never going to find that, right? Because that implies that you need this second thing, which is hierarchy. But so somebody else can define the structure for you. And that just, I feel like those two things are fundamentally at tension. So teams are fine. Teams can be quite productive. But if you just remove all role clarity and all structure from your work and all hierarchy from your organization, that seems like a fool's errand, unless perhaps you bring in, again, AI, who can maybe serve as the thing that brings the clarity, brings the structure, brings the hierarchy in the organization that's necessary to make things happen.
I got a lot of points there, but just remind me of something. I saw someone advocating for a AI president of the United States, with the citizens being essentially acting as the board of advisors to the robot CEO. Or even president rather. But yes. One of the main things we don't talk about is role clarity, just having people understand the structure that they need. Kids need it, dogs need it, employees need it. Everyone needs to understand what they're there for and the purpose of it. You see these sort of like fragmented networks, like a social movement sort of things. They start fragmenting into different areas, and like they have competing values. They're no longer pulling in the same direction. You see this over and over. And like another sort of fallacy of the network aspect is informal leaders emerge. Like you do develop hierarchy eventually. You get these big nodes in the network that have a lot of influence, and whether they have positional power or anointed power, as it were, it doesn't really matter because they become the leaders anyway.
I love that. Actually, I have a point I want to come back to on the next one I bring up about that topic in particular. But do you have another article for me?
Well, hit me with it. Hit me with it if it makes a good segue.
Okay. This one is an old one. I've been wanting to talk about this for like 6 months, but it came from 2018. It was in Harvard Business Review about better people analytics, and it says measure who they know, not just who they are.
Okay.
And this is kind of one of those better early articles on how to use O&A. Our mutual friend Michael Arena says it's more than just arts and charts or whatever. I think that's his common expression. And so they give 6 different bodies of how what they call relational analytics can help in doing better people analytics. The first is ideation. The second is influence, which I think this is exactly what you're talking about here. Is if you're in an organization and they have self-directed teams, that doesn't mean influence doesn't exist, and we need ways of measuring that influence. I'll hit on the last few. So it's efficiency, innovation, and silos, which again, and vulnerability. So like risk of people leaving. So I thought this is like one of those excellent kind of seminal articles about how O&A can be used to drive effectiveness in organizations. But I think it sort of ties to what we were saying a second ago about what is the value of key influencers in an environment if you don't have any kind of hierarchy.
Yeah, it also touches on like the fractured nature of networks as they become like into different silos, as it were, and different networks serve different purposes. He kind of hits on this here, as far as smaller networks are good for ideation, bigger networks are good for getting shit done. You need both, but you need some sort of structure, overarching structure, to let people know, hey, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and everyone needs to pull in the same direction. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
Absolutely.
No, network analysis is good for any situation where 2 or more people need to communicate. So if you have any situation like that in your organization, i.e., organized, it has some sort of application there.
When I imagine, again, going back to Bayer, who got rid of all their middle managers, they better have a self-organized relational analytics team that's measuring the impact of this pre and post, because there's a lot of meat left on the bone to be had in terms of understanding its impact across the organization.
I have something for you that relates to this. Let's see if I can find it. Can I hit you with one? Just because, like, I think it
Yeah,
ties in well here. This one's
do it.
called "Moving Off the Map: How Knowledge and Organizational Operations Empowers or Alienates Employees." So the bit here is the more information that people are given about their role in the organization and how the organization is structured tends to alienate how processes evolve. It tends to alienate people. So people at the center of the network that think that they're in control of all this sort of stuff, once they learn more about how everything operates around them, they tend to become more, they tend to find their way to the periphery of the network and influence from those sort of perspectives, because they realize that they have no real control over the entire structure that they think that they actually do. And I'll have to paraphrase, I don't have it in front of me. But they had a quote from a CEO who they set him down. They showed him how everything operates in the organization, and had this big diagram out. And like, he apparently put his head in his hands, and it said, "Oh my God, it's so much worse than I thought it was. Any sort of like tenuous grasp that I thought that I had on control is totally gone. And I fooled myself into believing I had any control at all at any point."
Yeah. There was a band I liked in high school called Thrice, and they had an album called The Illusion of Control, and it's all about this. So, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people go through that maturation, let's call it, at work, where in the beginning you feel like you have no control, and so as you kind of gain momentum at work, you're trying to kind of get more, the ability to influence your surroundings, and then you get to a certain point and you realize, like, oh, I can't influence anything, everything's just happening without me, so I might as well give up. I don't know.
Yeah, the feelings of what does it say here? The altered comprehension highlights their control roles are less effective and more a part of the organization's inefficiencies, leading to feelings of alienation. So actually, just having a better understanding of the organization can actually alienate people. It's wild.
I mean, this is, I would almost put this under like the kind of like Cole Napper hypothesis that I never, like, I have all these like random ideas that I never share with people, and then it's like occasionally somebody writes about them in Organizational Science, which is a pretty reputable magazine.
I don't have the full
So,
article here, else I wish I had that quote for you, because it's greatness. It's absolute greatness. He drops an F bomb in there somewhere. I can't remember where it is, but it's a nice F bomb in a research article.
that's pretty rare.
Oh, speaking of that, can I hit you with a couple more?
Yeah, hit me with some more.
So I got a triple threat for you. Because I do enjoy just perusing Google Scholar. I thought it'd be fun. I found 3 articles on the use of profanity. All right. Okay. The first one's called "Relationship Between Profanity and Intelligence." It didn't seem like it was like that great of a study, but they took 28 questions assessing frequency of profanity usage and one personality test, and essentially found no relationship between IQ and cursing. So kind of interesting there. This is based on college students, so not a huge sample or diverse sample by any means, but kind of interesting sample there. Study there, rather. Study 2, frankly, we don't give a damn, the relationship between profanity and honesty. So this is really interesting. They took 272 participants in a lab study and studied their relationship between honesty and profanity usage. They also use Facebook and all these interactions on Facebook to identify people that are lying based on how they use "I" and just the way they craft their sentences, and related to other outcomes. And essentially found that people that use more profanity are more honest overall. And then finally, good. Cursing as a form of risk taking
I'll cut to the chase here. Higher risk takers report more cursing. There's no relationship between the sexes, although men do report more cursing overall. So you get no relationship to intelligence. There is a positive relationship to honesty and a positive relationship to risk-taking behaviors with the use of cursing.
You know what this made me think of is one of the things that they've struggled in the assessment world is understand when somebody's faking versus being honest on an assessment. And I wonder if you could use cursing as some kind of mechanism for testing if people are honest.
Have you? Oh man, the life scales are so silly. It's like I never speed. It's like, well,
Yeah,
I mean, okay,
they're
this
very flawed.
is weird buried in like another the other questions that you're asking around like how I operate at work, etc. Have you ever been in like a weird situation where someone's cursing at work or like just like it's so odd, inappropriate, and he's like, oh, this is like an odd situation going on here.
Well, it is strange when somebody you don't expect to curse starts cursing, right?
That's the best. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah. And when that does happen, it's like you like, let's say you get in a, it's like a meeting with a senior leader and they're very polished. And then there's like the meeting after the meeting. And then there's like cursing up a storm. And you're like, whoa, wasn't expecting this. Wow.
I will say when you're in a meeting and people start cursing, like I was like, finally, we're getting stuff done.
Finally, we're having an honest conversation. I'm talking with a high integrity person here.
Absolutely.
This is good.
I will say that I interviewed at a place in Boston, a biomedical company whose stock was, last I checked, was about $1. It was $160 when I applied or was being interviewed. But it was like the CHRO, and I'm in the interview with her. She's like, "We curse here at company, and we don't give a damn. Fuck that. Yeah." It's like, what the hell's going on?
That sounds like for some reason that what was that woman on Veep who was also on Seinfeld?
Ellen, whatever her name is. Yeah.
Yeah, like whatever her name is, she it sounds like something she would do.
God, it was so weird, like out of place. Like this is the opposite of honesty. It's like dishonest cursing. It's like it's like performative act.
Well, it's like a double entendre or something because the cursing should show how you have integrity, but because you're doing it on purpose, you're actually showing you have even less integrity than you should have.
Yeah, you're trying to manufacture a sense of honesty and open communication with dishonest means, I guess, is a way to phrase it. It was so weird. So weird.
That is super weird.
If you just want to start cursing, just start cursing. But you're going to be like, around here, we curse all the time. Like, okay.
What a weird tactic to try to sell people on working there.
She didn't seem to like me much. I didn't seem to like her much either, so.
That could be mutual. Right.
Well, I hope you're doing damn well, lady.
Yeah. That's so weird. Well, maybe I wonder if she gets paid a lot. Because the last one I had, I'm getting paywalled on it, so I'm not going to share it. But it was there's something going on right now called the white collar recession.
Oh,
and I think it's something we've hit on with a few of our economist guests, sort of, but none of them have been this directly when talking about it. Essentially what the article states is that the more someone gets paid, the more likely they are to be laid off right now.
yeah,
that may have always been the case, but I think it's even harder to find a job the more you get paid. So essentially, the economy and the unemployment rate are great as long as you're low paid. All right, so if you have low pay, you can find a job in like 10 minutes. But the more money you make, the harder it is to find a job, and the more likely you are to be laid off. And so, I thought that was fascinating.
It is fascinating, and it makes sense. Like it's a pyramid structure, right? Of like pay and like the number of jobs are available out in the wild, right? There's only not that you'd find this on like on Indeed.com or something like that, but Like if you want to be a CEO, there's not that many of them out there. And then you
Yeah.
go down a little bit further, there's a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more to get like the frontline workers. So I mean, it makes perfect sense. Um, I there's other elements of if you're reporting to someone of the same level who's reporting to someone at the same level, you get these sort of like weird sort of level chains. Look
Mm-hmm.
look out, especially if you're high paid, right?
Oh yeah.
That's
Yep.
where you got to start feeling nervous because like what kind of value, especially that middle person, I suppose.
Yeah. Fun fact for all the fans out there. If your org chart has like you reporting to someone who's reporting to someone and there's no other direct reports, that's bad. Don't do that.
Oh, just like a chain going down a
Yeah.
hierarchy.
It's just like creating a bunch of unnecessary management positions in the middle. It's like that is a dicey position to be in.
All I hear is meetings. I hear like these sort of chains. Like that just means meetings upon meetings upon meetings that don't need to happen. A lot of wasted time and effort.
Yep. Do you have any more articles for me?
I got a couple more. So I have a correction. We'd like to be directionally
Oh.
correct, but last week I was incorrect. I stated that ChatGPT had bitten into Wikipedia, but this article refutes that, saying that there's no decline in Wikipedia engagement, instead, an increase in page views and number of visitors was observed past ChatGPT. However, the increase was lower in languages where ChatGPT was available. So while we have not seen an increase in or decrease in Wikipedia usage, it may on the future. So while we're not directionally correct last week, maybe in the future we officially will be. But currently, no impact to Wikipedia from ChatGPT.
Well, I love the high integrity move of issuing a correction. I don't think we've ever done that before, and there's probably been some instances where it needed to be done from me, especially.
We
But
definitely needed to in the past.
yeah, it's like we need to have like a mea culpa episode or something. But I felt like our name directionally correct was kind of the get out of jail free card for saying stupid and wrong things. So, but I appreciate you doing it.
I think I'd seen an opinion piece essentially saying that Wikipedia could suffer under this, and I pressed it a little bit too harshly. But I did find this article that refuted it, so it's interesting stuff there. Um, I gotta think that Wikipedia is going to take a hit eventually. I'll double down on what I said last week. I gotta think that Wikipedia is going to take a hit eventually, especially as ChatGPT and these other LLMs can essentially scour the internet now.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to because it's the source data, right? And it was I think the point I made last week based on your, I guess, faulty point was um, eventually, the internet as we know it will go away and it will probably be just AI and you're just interacting with AIs. And if that, again, thesis holds true, that's going to have a negative impact on Wikipedia, if nothing else. So I'll stand by that. That's my prediction.
You got time for one more?
Yeah, hit me with it.
Since we're talking Gen AI, this article is entitled "Don't Expect Juniors to Teach Senior Professionals to Use Generative AI: Emergent Technology Risk and Novice AI Mitigation Tactics." So essentially, the bit is in the past, you've had younger employees had to teach older employees how to use a computer, how to use the internet, how to use email properly, or how, hey grandpa, here's how you plug in a CD or whatever. The same's not true for generative AI. They tend to misunderstand the technology and the limitations and capabilities of it, going into focusing on human routine changes rather than system design. So they essentially coach the senior employees wrongly in how to use the technology, not fully understanding the underlying capabilities of it. This is kind of like a wild shift. Like we finally seen a point where even young professionals, young people in general, have and the same or worse grasp on technology as older folks.
Well, I think this is actually really interesting because I've had the same thought in mind, but I wasn't sure if I was right in terms of like usually when there's a new technology, there's early adopters and you go through the whole adoption curve. And And with this one, there was a lot more of what I would call just generic fakery. Like people who were acting like they were good at AI, but not really doing anything with AI. And it seemed to cut across every generation. And I think it has to do with like the barriers to entry are so low. Like, cause it's literally like using Google, right? You just type something into it, it gives you a response. The barriers to entry are so low, but everybody wants to seem like they're the really advanced one. And so they know how to use Google so much better than everybody else. And the reality is, we're all kind of dumb when it comes to this, and it's very emergent. And the other thing is, the technology itself changes like every 3 months, and so something that worked 3 months ago won't necessarily work anymore. And so again, you're back at square one all the time because your little tip and trick that used to help you doesn't help you anymore.
I think that this is also coupled with other issues that we've seen come down the pipe where, say, Gen Z kids don't understand technology in the way that, say, millennials or Gen X has, because everything that they've had, it just works, right? It's advanced, it works. You don't have to troubleshoot it, you don't have to play with it, and therefore don't understand underlying concepts. I don't even like plugging in something. Uh,
Yeah. They never had to blow on a video game to get it to work.
Blow on a video game, mess with a CD to like get the scratches out. Nothing like that. And
You ever put toothpaste on a CD to try to get it to not skip?
I don't think I ever tried that trick.
Yeah, somebody told me. I don't even think it worked, but that was like a big thing when I was younger.
Or like have to like go through like MySpace taught me basic HTML skills.
Yeah.
You had to learn basic HTML to get it to work, or at least modify your page or whatever. And now you're at a point where like younger employees never had to do that sort of stuff, and their friends, like you said, they're experiencing this technology at the same time as older employees. So there's no real help here,
Yeah.
and perhaps have a worse understanding because older employees at least understand uh, the technology issues that they had to deal with previously.
And maybe this is the future. Maybe everybody's going to be bad at every new technology forever.
Oh, I mean, to your point, there's so much technology coming down the pipe so quickly that we're kind of reaching what Tillman Sheets talks about, like Kurzweil's curve, where we're going up the curve towards singularity, and it's getting faster and faster.
That is, I mean, that's very Tillman-esque. He'll probably enjoy the shout out here, having been a prior guest on multiple times.
Okay, one more. You do one more.
Let's do one more.
This was called "Good Gamers, Good Managers," a proof of concept study using Sid Meier's Civilization. So, Civilization is one of these like cool games where you start out with like a village, and you got to barter resources, and I don't know, I don't know, I don't play this sort of thing, but essentially you build an empire from it, right? So essentially, they gave this game to 40 business students and played Civilization under controlled laboratory conditions and participated in a series of assessment exercises. And they found that students scored higher in the game, exhibited better problem solving and organization and planning skills than those who scored lower. Preliminary analysis of in-game data and player interactions suggests that strategy games can facilitate more precise holistic strength assessments, potentially including personality assessments. So these sort of games, it goes hand in hand with the sort of skills that you would need to be a business major and or successful in the real world.
What I love about this is it gets to a point that I thought about. Remember when gamification was really hot and everybody wanted to create like a game-based assessment? And my thought was like, why are you guys trying to create these shitty game-based assessments that nobody wants to do? They're not high fidelity. Why don't you just use pre-existing games? Like I guess like Civilization or like Halo or something like that, and then just try to see what psychological constructs you can measure from those games. And it sounds like that they're pretty high fidelity with this Civilization thing that they did with business students. So to me, that sounds like, like have something fun that everybody likes to do, have them do it as a part of, hiring or promotion based decisions. And then, you'll see this high fidelity picture for the future. I don't know. Sounds reasonable.
It's reasonable. And you're talking about like essentially the same constructs that are involved in the the decision, the business process, right? You got to plan resources, strategize how you're going to acquire, how to strategize how you're going to grow. It makes perfect sense. You parlay this over, kind of like the military released their own, I don't know, Call of Duty sort of game and identified folks that would be a good match for the military because they have like a natural inclination towards,
Yeah,
you know.
that makes sense. And just to disagree with myself here, I think there were a lot of thoughts, prior to video games that things like assessing somebody's chess ability would actually be a good predictor of future performance. And I think I've seen research that shows that that's actually not helpful at all in terms of predicting things like intelligence or like the ability to strategize. And so maybe unless you're really clear on the constructs you're measuring and their relatedness to job relevant tasks, maybe it's not a good idea. I don't know. Now I'm just disagreeing with myself.
I love when that happens. I think that if I can just like pull on that string, I think that this in particular, this strategizing in this game Civilization, and the relationship to problem solving, this is just a measure of cognitive ability, right? It's like how you plan for the future. It fits right into fluid intelligence, this sort of stuff. Chess, I think it's a slightly different animal. Yes, it's a strategy game. Yes, you're like trying to defeat an opponent, but I think a lot of it's like crystallized intelligence. Like, do you understand the different gambits that go into the moves? I don't have any research to back up the intelligence level of chess players. Obviously, at the top end, I think they're hyper intelligent, but
Sure. I think what you're saying makes sense. And then Paul Sackett would come along and say, well, intelligence doesn't matter, or doesn't matter as much as we thought it did. So it's like,
Paul, come on. We'll have you on. I'd love to talk some chess with you.
we already did. Yeah. We could do it again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It was a fun guest. When you hear something funny, this is kind of related, but kind of unrelated, is a while back, we were talking about, a person, I'm not going to name their name, and we had said some funny stuff about him, and then I got this like email thread from somebody else that they listened to the episode and they were like unhappy about what we said about it. I was like, oh, maybe people are like, sometimes I forget that people actually listen to this. I know that sounds stupid, but like sometimes I just completely forget that anybody actually listens to what we're saying. It's like, oh, just say whatever. And then you realize like this is impacting people's lives. So person out there that we talked about, I'm sorry.
And we do greatly respect the work of Paul Sackett, and that was a great interview. We'd love to have you on again.
No, absolutely. Paul's fantastic, and he's done more than just be the article we covered with him too. Like he's got so many awesome things that he's researched over the years. So he was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I can fully imagine that he's going to pull the thread on this Schmidt and Hunter revival, whatever you want to call it, because there's so much more ground to explore there. Different cuts of cognitive abilities or just abilities in general. It's just like kind of like, once again, it's a scientific process. Like we're trying to find out the truth at the end.
Well, maybe there will be a revival. I'm sure there's some research to be done out there about like, are intelligent people better at using AI? And if so, maybe AI or maybe intelligence will come back into the fold as being a predictor of job performance, because I imagine in the future, AI usage is going to be a big predictor of job performance.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I don't think cognitive ability is going to go away at all. It's the issue of like, so something like go back to like the Civilization game, right? That is hyper, like you said, hyper fidelity for the situation that you're trying to accomplish, right?
I guess if you're a city planner or something.
Yeah. It's like a procurement of resources, how to utilize resources, where to expend them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
You'd probably be good in a real estate function or a finance function or maybe accounting. I don't know.
The problem is you just got to sit there for 2 years before you get an intelligence score out the back end.
I don't know if it takes that long, but yeah, that's too long to wait. That's for sure.
Those games like SimCity or whatever, they suck you in super hard. At the end, you're like,
it's kind of like a fantasy football team. You show somebody, look at the what I built here, and they're like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. That's terrible. Why did you spend your life doing this?
It's completely digitized experience that doesn't translate to the real world.
This means nothing to anybody. It's kind of like when someone shows you their fantasy football roster, you're like, yeah, I don't want to see it. I don't want you to ever tell me that again. I don't want to see this. I don't care.
Well, dude, I'm really looking forward to the 100th episode that we have coming up, but this is a record episode. I think we covered 14 articles. We made it through a lot, so maybe we wrap this sucker up and we can get on with our day. How about that?
Yeah, I like that. Hey, good to see you, bud. Talk soon.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, the People in This podcast with Cole and Scott, and today's guest, nobody. Directionally Correct is dedicated to you, our listeners, to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. By supporting this podcast, you are helping us continue to provide valuable insights and knowledge to our listeners. Please consider becoming a patron of the podcast. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for your support.